everybody. Welcome and thanks so much for tuning in. On today's episode, Ryan and I sit down and chat with Matthew Yahes, a serial entrepreneur by trade, but currently the CEO of Extend Your Team. As it sounds, Extend Your Team is an outsourcing outfit, not your everyday staffing operation, a bit more global outsourcing. To be honest though, we don't spend a ton of time talking about that. We do talk about why it came about, and I'm not going to spoil that for you, but let's just say hiring a single employee transformed Matt's life. And that experience is less than a year old. As we get into more of the behind the scenes, the growing up, what made you this version of yourself, what really struck me was just how sincere this guy was. He's passionate, but beyond the passion is just honesty. There's pain with these struggles. There's pride with surviving them. And Matt showed up today. Ryan and I didn't know him at all. And by the time we got off the call, I think we all felt like we had made some new friends. I know, that sounds a little corny, but tune in. Let me know what you think. Are you having as much fun listening as we did making it? Get to know Matthew Yahes, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, transitioning between like the workspace, like meeting all day on, certainly without this fancy microphone, I don't show up in front of my coworkers with this thing, into like podcast space. Like I have to reset all these settings on my laptop. So thanks for being patient, Matthew.
Oh man, all good.
Thank you for more than that. I wanted to introduce you right away because we just met this guy and we haven't stopped talking. So I have a feeling like this is going to be an awesome episode, but I wanted to allow you the opportunity to properly introduce yourself. And before I go any further, are you delicate about Matt versus Matthew?
No, only if my mother or my wife is yelling at me. Then it's my full name, Matthew Ian Yahes.
Yes, sir. We all know what that means. So
flows off the tongue.
Matthew Yahes, thank you so much for joining us on conventioNOT today. Please tell our audience a little bit about you.
Sure. So I grew up in New York, typical middle class upbringing. Went to college upstate New York. I'm an avid snowboarder. I think I've been to like 35 countries, traveled, snowboarded probably about like 8 or 9 countries. At this point, I'm a serial entrepreneur, but I didn't start out that way for sure. And most of the time right now, I spend trying to figure out how not to work and live for my time. It's pretty much all I do now. And it's a lot more fun than just being in the grind, which I was in, and getting my ass kicked.
I love it.
That's it. I mean, I'm sure we'll go into a lot of other stuff.
I was playing it over in my head last night, but I didn't think this would be fair. But I felt like you would probably be pretty capable of doing like, all right, give me the 15-second intro. Go. And that was perfect because that's exactly Ryan. And, feel free to disagree with me here, but dude, that's why we wanted to talk to you, because you have this title, you have this current role, you're doing something interesting, but I kind of gathered you're a pretty normal kind of, I always say blue collar, but we're going to go further East Coast. You're a normal New Yorker, just a normal guy.
I am. You know what? Listen, at the end of the day, none of this stuff is that complicated. As I just read recently, which is really true, you just got to pay your tuition. That's it, man. You got to pay your tuition. And sometimes the tuition's pretty high. It is what it is. You hear, especially being Silicon Valley, you hear these stories. Mark Zuckerberg, dropped out of Harvard and was a billionaire. Yeah, that's great. There's one guy who was already rich. And yes, he built Facebook as a billionaire. But that's one guy. The rest of everybody else I know who is an entrepreneur busts their ass learning and they make a lot of mistakes, right? I know I have.
Yeah, that's true. Especially if you don't hit it out of the park with the first try, which seems to be the way that the deck is typically stacked. Are you tech as well?
So that's funny. I've done tech. I've done non-tech. Let's see. So my first entrepreneurial gig was I started a national restaurant chain with the former president of McDonald's. That was my first entrepreneurial gig. Then I did some tech stuff that, where I didn't own it. I jumped in. About 5 years ago, I bought an e-com portfolio with zero experience, and it was, doing 7 figures in revenue at that point when I bought it. And now I'm in the people business, so staffing agency.
Okay.
Wow.
So wide
sure.
range of stuff, you know.
Totally. You're still trying to figure out what you like.
It's funny. I really realized that everyone talks about product market fit. Nobody talks about business entrepreneur fit, right? You could be a great business person, but in the wrong business, you're going to suck. And, for me, I don't suck at e-commerce. I just don't enjoy it, which is ironic because I have a decent sized e-commerce business, but it's just, I'm not the right person, right? There are people who are way better at it, really into like the metrics and the details. I just didn't like it. I mean, the restaurant business I enjoyed only because I got to talk to people a lot, kind of just really go out there and meet these crazy people. And the staffing business, I help people solve problems, which is a lot more fun.
Got it.
Is the chain still around, or did you guys sell it? What happened? What's the chain?
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. I mean, I left after 4 years. It was, I think, 12 or 13 restaurants, took in some money, transferred a lot, pretty much operating ownership, and, just wrong fit for what they were doing. They were really successful people, but they just were not a match for the concept. They were more into fast food, and we were into like healthy, big branding, fast casual, like trying to change the world kind of stuff. And it just was a mismatch.
Okay.
So that's a short answer of saying it was, now I think there are 2 locations in Chicago run by a great guy who knows what he's doing, but it's now just a niche thing in Chicago.
It's very different. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't talk about that, and this is what your episode's about because you're a positive guy, but like the dismantling of a restaurant chain is really just like it's such a, because no matter what, in order to like push and design something, especially if it's franchise based, I work a little bit with like scaling businesses always, is certainly, I guess, Mike, like, you changing your shirt or something, Mike?
No, I was cleaning my screen.
Up there. But to any regard,
listen, I don't know what he's doing. Covering his
just look away.
His camera.
Just look away.
When you're building a scalable like restaurant business, there's always love that starts. I'm just gonna keep talking through it. Like fuck it, who cares? But then a lot of times, and the fact is, especially in that silo, and I'm curious to hear about the other places you went from there. Certainly, if it sounds like you had a little bit of a cash event at the right time, but like it's so sad to watch a chain like that fail. So much time and energy and effort and design goes into everything aside from the food in that type of a scaling environment, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I murdered myself for 4 years. I mean, no friends. We were scaling across the country, right, out of the gate. And I didn't see my friends. God, no, I couldn't keep a relationship, but it was exciting. Every day was exciting, right? I mean, you're trying to do something crazy. And at the time, like healthy fast food or fast casual, it just wasn't a thing, right? And so I was the junior guy on the team, and just with these guys with really big ideas, I was
you were doing the legwork. You were doing
sweat equity. Young man's capital is sweat equity for our listeners.
Yeah, and they got their pound of flesh, but it was the best opportunity of my life. I mean, sure. I don't think
great experience.
Even though it actually wasn't a real cash event for me, even though it worked out like that, I wouldn't trade it for the world because it set you on a path to something else, and it set me on a path to do what I'm doing now, which is I'm really thankful. But had just really great experiences. Met people who just hardworking, from really senior executives in the restaurant industry to just people who are cooks and servers and cashiers, and you start to realize how hard these people work. Like, oh my God, incredible! Like sitting on the line cooking for 8 hours. It's tough stuff.
It's thankless, man, and there ain't a lot of people making much more than enough to get by. And that it's so glamorized nowadays, right? And like we have this Food Network idea of these celebrity chefs, and it's like, dude, that's like the one LeBron James. You know how many people are behind the scenes for that? Like, and it's not everyone there is making much money, or really, I hate to say this and not to just label an entire industry, but like just a hard way of life. The restaurant, the service industry, specifically.
Well, and then to try to scale it from a revenue business model perspective,
I can't even
take like all those
that,
components and then still try to like take a haircut so that you could market a bigger model. So let's not let's not make Matt like relive old failed business.
Well, that honestly,
that's okay.
So wait, hold on.
I wouldn't trade for the world. I wouldn't trade.
Right? Yeah. No. Like I think
awesome.
for our listeners, and like week by week we get more engagement with our listeners and stuff, and they ask about things like that. And I think that it's almost the stories of struggle that help frame the stories of win, right? And so to that pivot, I know you said 7 figures, you said e-com and that kind of stuff. So like from our like listeners' perspective, from a humble perspective, you're explaining that to your grandma. Help like parenthesize that. We don't need to know like your revenue for 2020 or those types of things, but help us understand how big that business is and like what that really means, like why you lead with it, explaining it that way. 7 figures in e-com. What's your, what are you doing there to help us kind of understand, right, from an early career to kind of like the next part of where you are today?
Yeah, I'm an open book. I'll talk numbers all day. I don't care. And so, so the reason I lead with that is it's not, so when people think of like, small e-com, like someone like I would do, right? Everyone thinks of e-com as Amazon, right? Or just the internet businesses, Amazon, Facebook, Google.
That's how I think of it. Yeah.
But that's not the
super
internet.
Simplified. Yeah.
Yeah. There are tens of thousands of businesses making, call it anywhere from $500,000 gross to 15 million gross you've never heard of. And there's this whole sector of entrepreneurship that are pretty much like sub VC level where people make real money and just work for themselves, right? So in my case, I bought a portfolio that was at the time doing roughly 3 million, right? I had never owned an e-com business. I said, F it, I'm a smart guy. I'm just going to do this, right? It was, kind of crazy, but you got to believe in yourself. Or being an entrepreneur, you got to be, you guys know, you got to be crazy. No sane person wants to do this, right? It's just not normal.
Eccentric, we say.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, just really just ground it out for like a couple years and grew it and learned a lot of hard lessons. And here's the crux of where I am today. So I'm in the wedding business, right? So I grew this thing to about roughly 5 million a year. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm in the wedding business, right? Now,
what's that mean?
Okay, sure. So e-commerce, right, is the hottest thing right now. Everyone is probably crushing it in e-commerce, right? So selling online through my own property. I sell wedding favors. So I have one of the larger wedding favor site on the internet.
Okay,
I have 2 of them, and then I have some gift basket sites, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine how many people are buying wedding favors in a pandemic.
A lot.
So can you clarify? Yeah, so like
is a little different.
Yeah,
a wedding favor. Does that mean like a gift registry? Like, or are you talking about features in a wedding? Or I'm just pretend I'm the dumbest person you've talked to.
Yeah, like what are the SKUs that are on your site, so to speak?
Sure. So you ever go to a wedding and on the table they leave like a bottle opener or a glass with the bride and groom's name on it. Those kind of a fan,
like
those
takeaways,
kind of things, like takeaways that
like
are
wedding swag.
Wedding swag. You're like, and you're like, who the hell sells this crap? I'm that guy.
Got it.
So
okay.
But
that makes sense. Sure.
But the interesting thing about the business is one of the reasons I bought it is that it's one of the larger ones for the category. But most importantly, in 2008, during the downturn, sales were just perfect, right? Did not have a blip in sales in the worst, economic crisis in God knows how long. Right.
Okay.
Well, so I like to say it's recession proof, but not pandemic proof. So, you're right. So, so I spent, honestly, I was just getting murdered and I spent all this time growing this business. And then here comes the pandemic. And, like I like to say the business is on pause. It still, makes a good amount of money. Right. But it's not making what it was.
Okay.
And so you talk about entrepreneurship being hard. Hey, man, stuff happens. Like, how do you prepare for this? Like, how do you actually prepare for a pandemic? I mean, in the wedding business where weddings are essentially illegal, right?
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah. And so like I just got royally smacked in coronavirus and, retrenched and then completely pivoted. I mean, the business is still fine. It's running. I have 9 people running it for me now. But, I completely pivoted and just, reoriented my focus to something else, capitalizing what I learned in the past 5 years.
Wow.
I see.
Just a quick transition. I mean, not transition, but you just continue to diversify as needed, right? I mean,
that's it. So, it's it was quick, but it took me. It took me 5 years of getting punched in the face in e-com to figure out how to do something quickly. Before, it would have taken me a year. Now it took me 8 weeks. I'm like, okay, fix this. Done.
Making money with something new.
What could we do to, I talked to my team, what else could we do? And then
were you in a tech ecosystem? So I assume and the whole show isn't just about like question and answer to Matt, like what he's doing, right? But we appreciate that. So like prior to the e-com world and certainly understanding to the talent world, which I understand a little bit about, but were you already doing, let's say tech forward business, whether it be SEO based business or, transaction based business in that regard? I mean, because those two things I can understand how are relative and why that would be at least a little bit of a nimble pivot, especially in a time of pandemic, to be able to move from like place, I think it's placement, right? At least to a certain extent, right? And so was the pivot to e-com like the same kind of thing for you? Or because, I guess in my mind, I'm picturing you like running around the bases faster and faster and faster, right? Like every time you hit something that's a challenge, like you run faster around that next corner.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I would say the reason I went into e-com, my wife told me after, working in a couple startups in Silicon Valley for a very short period of time, she's like, you can't work for anybody else. She goes, stop trying to work for people. I mean, I remember I worked for this guy and I just come in from working with some really senior restaurant people. I mean, like, I don't know anything about restaurants. These guys are, 30-year veterans. And I worked for a restaurant type startup in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. And I remember him, we're sitting here at like some meeting and he's telling me, well, I don't think this is how menus are developed. And I'm sitting here looking at the chef. I'm like, chef, is this how menus are developed? He's like, yes. He's like, well, I don't think that's valid. We need to challenge our assumptions. And I'm like, you just don't know what you're talking about. Like, yes, I get it. I get reorienting and like, trying to figure out something new, but you just don't know what you're talking about. So I did like, that was like a 30-day gig. I was like, yeah, I'm out. Have a nice life. The company,
fiery. Yeah, no, I can imagine.
Like, good luck, buddy. Good luck. Right. Actually, the story's funnier. He actually sent me a 30-day performance review. Okay.
Like, I don't need to open this. I'm not using this. Isn't a reference. This is not a reference.
I said, I think it was a Saturday. I got this and I was laughing. I said, all right, I was telling my wife, I'm like, I think I need to talk to him. So we sat on a Saturday and, whatever, had a beer. And I said, what do you think I do for you? I go, he goes, well, you said you're going to solve all my problems. I'm like, oh, I can. I mean, I can't solve it in 30 days, but I can solve your problems. Here's what you don't know. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And I said, look, it's kind of obvious you don't know what you're doing, right? I'm happy to be CEO until you're ready to be CEO. And I'll just show you these kind of things, right? But otherwise, it's not going to work. And he's like, well, I don't think that's what's right for the business. And, tell me to go F off, which he should have, right? I mean, that's what I would have done. And, I was just like, this isn't going to work for me. I started selling some stuff on eBay for fun. And then I was like, oh yeah, let me just go, spend $1 million and go buy a business. Take out an SBA loan, know nothing about it, convince the SBA to give me money. And just, that's what I did.
Nice. You mentioned crazy. All right. So now I got to back it up. It up because you are a little off, Matthew. I like it. I like it a lot.
In like this warming, loving way.
All of my favorite things.
Maybe the food startup guy didn't feel the love, but I'm just saying it's like, it's the warmth.
It's coming out of you currently. What? So dude, can we take it back a little bit? Because you clearly have like a drive and a penchant for like, less than stable or promised situations. Like, and I'm not trying to be dramatic, dude, but like, what was growing?
True.
Like, what was your teenage? Like, were folks entrepreneurs? Like, can you, if you don't mind, getting a little personal, like upbringing? Like,
Yeah,
what
how'd you
did
catch
you
that?
want to be this e-commerce king? You know, like, take it back, bro. I need to know. I need to go deeper.
Oh yeah, I mean, so my parents were divorced when I think it was 6 months old. 6 months old.
Oh shit. Okay.
They remained friendly, right? But they just, they were divorced, and around 4 years old, they both got remarried, right? And my stepmom and my dad she already had kids, so I have a stepbrother, stepsister. My stepbrother's my best friend. We were like thick as thieves. Teenage years were, I would say, I was not academically oriented and were slightly tumultuous. I mean,
you seem like the kind of guy who loves authority.
You're right.
Yeah. I am not. I'm not ripe for the military. I was very entrepreneurial in ways I probably, in my teenage years, we'll leave it at that. But we just got in a lot of trouble. I think growing up in New York in the 90s, it was crazy town, the stuff we would do. It was just crazy.
Are you from the city?
I grew up in Long Island, and my dad and my brother were in the city. And so we used to just get into all sorts of trouble. And, I skipped school, and God, I just made it out of high school by the skin of my teeth. I'm lucky I didn't get arrested.
I was just going to say,
I'm lucky. Listen, I'm lucky.
When you mentioned teenage entrepreneurship, we grew up in a much different time than, things like selling shoes online, which is an awesome thing to do now, was not so much an option when we were 13, 14 years old.
No,
I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure you were busy. And Long Island, did you say?
Yeah, Long Island. So about like half hour outside the city, 45 minutes.
Sure. Oh man.
Yeah. So it was just. I mean, look, grew up in the 90s in New York. It was just bananas. It was just bananas.
Right.
And so went to school upstate New York. Again, not academically oriented at all. I mean,
okay. So you kind of like you make it through high school, you go off to college. Like I don't want to say that's the American dream because hindsight's maybe a little bit more 2020. We're sitting here having won that or are maybe a little bit ahead of that race. But so like the American dream though, right? Like you get off to college, parents send you away to school upstate. Where'd you go?
Pretty normal.
Yeah. I mean, so
dorms and such.
Yeah, dorms such. I worked my way. I was a bartender, ran a bar throughout college, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to get a six-year degree for sure.
Right. I was on the 5-year program as a matter of fact.
That's fine. What's the rush?
Yeah, and did that. Just partied, had fun. I think, after college had the wake up call that a lot of people like me would have, which is, oh crap, just because I think I'm awesome doesn't mean other people think I'm awesome. Yeah. And they're not going to hire you. Right. Nope. They don't care. They don't
You're
care.
just another idiot with a piece of paper, right? Like, so Matthew, did you graduate from that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I graduated
college, university, like bachelor's degree.
Yeah, got my bachelor's degree in information science, which is computer science without as much math.
Sure. Got it. All right.
So, so I did that, busted my ass in New York City, worked my way up, ended up at a technology consulting company. That was like one of the fancy ones. Somehow I got in. Okay. And, spent 5 years there. They put me in Europe for a year, which was incredible. I lived in Amsterdam. So I was in Amsterdam around the year 2000.
So what are you like, awesome. 30 at this time? Are you in your late 20s, early 30s? Oh shit! So you really hit the ground running.
So you went into the consultancy. I don't know if that was top 5 or not, and listeners can Google top 5. We talk a lot about consultancy in both of us being consultants too. So you basically went into consultancy like first job out of college, first couple jobs out of college type thing. That's a cool opportunity for sure. Yeah, really cool.
They sent you over to Amsterdam for a year as a 25-year-old?
For a year, yeah. And it gets better. I mean, they had an expense account. I was able to fly back every other week to the United States first class.
Whoa.
Right? Or they would pay for me to fly somewhere else as long as it wasn't more than the money. So
Yeah.
I flew around Europe.
Wow.
Like a pimp. I had this expense account. They gave me an apartment.
This is like pre-on-run days. Just saying, right? Yeah.
I mean, listen, the client was paying for it.
Pre-Arthur Anderson shredding documents days.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just, top floor of a canal house in Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
And it was ridiculous.
I mean, I'm sorry to say, but
like, I don't know.
I don't care what you were doing during the day because they were giving
And so
So you got an opportunity to live some of that early career, like quickly. Right. Wow. That's cool. That's cool. So, okay. And I we're kind of like going through this dialogue, like one by another, so to speak. Now it's starting to line up to me about how you would take a bigger gamble, and for our listeners who aren't maybe understanding like the type of consulting you're talking about, like you're talking about working and probably billing extraordinary amounts of dollars for your time at that point in time, no matter how much money you earn. But as a young kid, it's good for, and a lot of the big consulting companies will allow you a huge expense account and some mobility, basically, to be able to like work your ass off, That's not that different than a lot of careers either, from that perspective.
So was there like they get their pound
was
of
there
flesh.
like and I think this is lined up because I think we have like probably similar age. But so then was there a point where you're like, fuck it, no more big dollar, high dollar consulting. I'm gonna do my own shit. But like, was there an event that said that?
Yeah,
because you don't go from expense account to showing people how to use a fryer. Without some love toward it.
Oh, so there was a past that. So at 30, I finished that up and then went to University of Michigan for business school. So somehow I convinced them to accept me, and I just went there and I was exposed for the first time the difference between going to a top tier school and where I came from, where you're recruited, people throw money at you, and it's it was a top 10 business school, so it's even more extreme. And then you go into the tiers of management consultings. Forget about tech consulting, the tiers of management consulting, and they just throw cash because they don't care, right?
Yeah.
And so I love Michigan, man. That was a fun place.
Yeah. And Raw School of Business is a fun, that's elite. Without any perspective, right?
Yeah. It's a good school. I was very fortunate that I got in and I was there. But it didn't teach me about entrepreneurship, but it's good for networking. But it helped me get here, that's for sure.
Hey, thanks for listening today. Are you a reviewer? Do you desire to share your opinion with everybody? Well, don't leave Mike and I at conventioNOT out of your list. Take a second, go out to your podcast provider, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever it is, and review the show. We appreciate it. We read the feedback, and we really need it.
The year after I left was when it was 2008. I graduated 2007. So 2008 is when we lost to Appalachian State, which, from University of Michigan to lose to Appalachian State at the time was like, are you kidding me? Right? We were, big popular program, and Appalachian State was, not a Big Ten program. And it was really a crazy time. Anyway.
I was in Atlanta for quite some time. I went to work. I have a software career, and I worked with a guy who went to App State and had the Sports Illustrated cover from that. I'd never met anybody who had gone to App State. And that is simply the largest thing that's ever happened in the history of their sports program. And it's like such, to hear somebody talk about it from the other area, obviously being from the Midwest, it was such an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, that's super cool. Good for them, right? They earned it. Good for them.
Yeah, I can't even recall the details, right? We all been through several coaches since then. Man, it seems like such a long time ago, So you're California based now? After sharing your detailed career, thanks again with us.
Actually, we're Lake Tahoe. So in Nevada.
Yeah.
So
I spent
great
a little
place
bit
to
of time
ride out
there.
the pandemic. Great place.
Yeah, for sure. I have some time I spent coming back and forth to Reno, some colleagues there, and we would go to Lake Tahoe like relatively quickly whenever I'd be over there over the weekend. And it was always enjoyable spot. So
Yeah.
does it become, now that I think our listeners understand, like, these pieces, and, even
Sure.
now, I mean, you're not, I don't know how old you are. That part doesn't necessarily matter, but you're not retirement age. Let's say that,
No,
right?
I'm 45. I'm 45.
And having grown through that career in a rapid pace career, one of the things I couldn't help but think about when you started to go into it is like, from leading, directing, starting, and then now kind of like operating, how do you think that leadership has changed from like your perspective? Very clearly, you're a person who leads people. I'm sure you motivate people who work around you, but like, how has it changed from that point in time of, let's say, not your entire career, but as you come across into like trying to scale a national business into the point now where you're leading somebody from the pandemic? What are like the couple things you've seen that are the biggest parts about influencing and really changing people that way?
Well, I think now, you're always a coach, right? You're always like, people are always going through stuff, right? Their own stuff, whatever that is. And you're always a coach, right? But I think during the pandemic, especially now, look, I'm in a fully remote business, right? Everyone is overseas, and actually they're in the Philippines and they have a lockdown. They're locked out. Like, we don't have lockdown in this country,
right?
Comparatively. And so just making sure that the people's personal lives are okay, that you're really trying to cheer them up. People are stuck in their houses, right? And it's just a tough situation. Mm-hmm. So, they can't get out. They couldn't leave their house for a while. So imagine that. Like, you have kids, you can't leave the house, you can't walk around without a pass. So much more so in the pandemic, I think you really need to be a cheerleader. I am, like, in my e-commerce business with that team, I am as open as you can be. I talk numbers with them. I say, here's the deal. Here's what's going on. Here's what's realistic. Here's what I see. I can't promise you guys anything, but I can just be open and honest with you, and we go forward together, right?
Sure.
When the whole business blew up, I said to them, here's, I had to cut salaries for 30 days, and then I did went everyone part-time, and I brought them back full-time after 30 days. But I said, when I cut salaries, I said, look, here's what the numbers are. We were here. Now we're here. I got to cut all this cost for now. I don't want to fire people, so I'm going to run you at halftime, right? So everyone has a job, because I don't want I don't want your families to worry. I don't want, I just can't, there's no money, but I'm going to still, instead of cutting 50% of you, I'm going to, I'm going to cut everyone's hours, right? Everyone understood. Everyone was grateful. You're open and honest. And then I brought everyone back once I saw the bottom. And I think leading now, I think you have to have a real level of understanding and authenticity that you had to always have, but now you have to have even more compassion, because people are just going through stuff. It's terrible. No matter where you are, it's just hard.
So you're not manifesting yourself any differently, really, I think is what I'm hearing you saying, is that, like, you're probably doing it through a screen. You're already working a little bit internationally, but you're just transparent, like you're using it through that way. Did you do the same thing through the downturn, right? Like, when you were leading at that point in time, I ask all my colleagues this. I would ask you this if we were like working on a project together, is like, what is it like the differences you see now as compared to then? Was it, I don't know, transparent? I don't want to put you in a position where you're like, no, I'm not transparent, right? But like, how are you influencing people then, let's say like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, as compared to now? Because I'm really intrigued, man. You've influenced people on all these different levels, which is a rare, that's a rare thing, bro. Really.
Oh, thank you. I guess I don't think of it like that way, because I honestly, Ryan, so when I was in the downturn working, let's just say like when I did the restaurant business, right? Yeah. Frankly, I don't think I was much of a leader, right? I just don't. Yep, we can hear you now. So I don't think, I was much of a leader, to be honest with you. My job was, or it's how I viewed it, was to be the guy that climbs the mountain, F everything. We got to get there. I'm taking no prisoners. If you can't keep up, too effing bad. We're going there. We're going there.
Okay.
We're going there. And I don't care about anything else. I'm not, now, in hindsight, that's not good, right? I mean, that's, and I was coached, I'd say coached in quotes, because my boss at the time, and who's a mentor of mine and a friend, I mean, he had some pretty harsh words with how I would handle myself sometimes, right? With the team. Because I no sympathies, like zero, zilch. Like I didn't care. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear anything. I was all in above and beyond. I expected you to be all in above and beyond, and I didn't care, right? And because the mountain was so big, in my opinion, right? And so I don't think I was much of a leader. I influenced more by you do this because I'm telling you to do this, rather than now. I would like to think my team is motivated because of how I treat them, where we want to go. I share success with them, and the host,
that's a different. That I can understand how that's the same person. And look, we go back like 30 minutes, so I don't want to over imagine that I know you, because it seems like our personalities are somewhat similar.
Yeah.
But like that seems like a perspective of somebody who very much so learned, right? Like when I think about somebody charging up the hill, whether I want to be respectful, but like I don't think that you seem like the kind of guy who is not a leader in your circle of friends, in your sphere of influence, probably like throughout life, right? Like, I'm sure that you work with people, but the difference of that as compared to how you answered that first question, which is that like, I'm very transparent. I ask people like, how are they doing? How are they doing in their home? As compared to like literally charging up the hill. I think that's something that gets overlooked way too many times because, well, I think I even felt myself doing it earlier in the episode. Like I was more curious about like the bullet points of your career, which are super exciting, but like that growth right there, we don't almost like pay attention to that and like understand that like, that's why the growth of a career happens, is that like, you kind of start to grow that way. And it's, not everybody makes it along.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, my path, I have had a lot of people have a direction, like I want to do this and I'm going to learn this. And they're very, very methodical. If you were in management consulting, or consulting in general, like there are people that are just good at that. And like, they really get the polish down, all this stuff. That never was me. Like, and I just needed to grow up a different way. Right. I needed this, in the way of, I need to pay my tuition a different way and go to the school of hard knocks and really learn my lessons. And, I was definitely like in a previous time, I would say a jerk, and I think you mature, right? Also, this is my team. I have 50 people now. I just, I want to be nice to everyone. I want them to succeed. And especially in staffing, like their success is my success. So like, what can I do to support you? My e-com, what can I do to support you? Right. Especially when you talk about, you're working with people who are maybe less fortunate than you. Right. And you just want to help them grow and attain their dreams. And I just think it's maturity on my part.
Yeah, I guess that's so right. Right. Like, well, I'm sure there's probably some fuck ups in there too.
Yeah, of course. It makes it sound like, yes, I did this and I matured and I realized. No, I mean, listen, I think anyone who starts a business or runs a business, I make mistakes all the time. Right. I make mistakes all the time. I mean, as recently as like the other day, I mean, like I make some scribble like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that, or I wasn't right way, or, I made a policy decision that is just wrong, like a bad idea and they'll cost me money, or, I think just for all the listeners, I mean, like, everybody goes through trials and tribulations. You're not who you're going to be. Right. Because if you're who you're going to be, you'll already be there. Right? Everybody grows. Everyone makes mistake. Entrepreneurship is hard. No one comes out being a great entrepreneur from the start. I'm sorry. Right? Even some of these storied companies that we all talk about, the people, if you talk to people in the company, it's not a story by a long shot. And so a lot of this stuff is mythology, and they create these.
Yeah, it's glorified, personas. Right?
It's glorified.
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard work. It's grinding. At the end of the day, you're in the people business, just talking to people, trying to work together towards a common goal of success.
What's up, y'all? It's Mike from the show. Are you one of those people that just hits play, listens, and then moves on to the next thing? It's totally cool because I'm one of those people too. But through this podcast, I've really grown to appreciate that all those reviews, those thumbs up, those comments, those stars, even the nastiness, it actually helps. It helps a lot. So don't be shy. Don't be scared. We've been called bad names before. Please comment, review, share the episodes if you don't hate them. What I'm getting at is feedback is essential to our program. And it's a big reason why Ryan and I do this. Not forcing you, just saying. It's out there. Hit that button. Thanks, y'all.
It's interesting to hear you talk about this. I feel like things sometimes happen for a reason, right? Like I'm like a data analyst that believes in like hippy dippy shit, and it's like this weird kind of component
Awesome.
from my perspective. But I've been fortunate to start to teach at my college that I went to. I went to Michigan State, so I've started to just like a little bit like get back involved, right? Like that. But I've talked to a professor and like an admin of the school that I went to about like trying to put some content together about a startup career, in that I think that at least from my perspective, and I'm probably one. Let's see, I've been working startups for 16 years now. Variable scales, a couple like exits, couple successful, couple not, couple businesses still working, right? But from that perspective, there's not a lick of like education that comes before a high level grad school for a startup career, right? From my perspective, on a career with which that you could put yourself into a I'm going to say this today is being recorded December 2020, a 6-figure income, right? And the reason I give that date today is because like that's a very sliding scale. And I wish that most people who are deciding to build like a career in startup, right? Or a career in entrepreneurialism, because those things I think are two channels, but they're like cousins of each other, right? A startup meaning that you're trying to build something that's going to scale up so that you can exit and either make a huge impact or make a huge, cash exit, right? I don't think there's any education for that, man, until, like I said, when you get to grad school or until you go and work at a startup and you get a mentor. Because that's what it's been in my careers. Like I have some of the best mentors ever. Like, my business just acquired acquired the other largest business in our space. And one of the first people that I'm always calling is a mentor, because I want to share those things first. And I don't think that gets written about in the same way that the failures that you talk about don't get written about, right? Like we don't write about policy mistakes and we don't write about phone calls to mentors unless those mentors are famous or for some reason, right?
This is fun.
Which is weird, man. Like, I think it's conversations like what we're recording today. Hopefully this doesn't feel too rabbit hole-ish to you. I know Mikey's having a little bit of audio problem in and out, but man, like these conversations don't fucking happen. But yet there's so many kids that at whatever age, 22 to 40, and I say kids because you got to be a kid at heart, I think, to like quit everything and start something.
Yeah, there's no education.
You have to have like some youthful exuberance about you. There's not much education for that, dude. There's a lot of like
I also
YouTube
have
videos.
Different mentors for different things, right? Right. The most senior guy I know, I don't call him for just real tactical level stuff that he's not the right guy for. Right?
Same. Yeah.
I'll talk to a different mentor about someone who's, had multiple businesses, how do I structure things that makes a lot more sense for this other person. Right. But you're right, Ryan, like there's just no real honest communication training about how to do this stuff. And frankly, business school doesn't teach you. I mean, I didn't go to an entrepreneurship program, so maybe they do an entrepreneurship programs, but it's just, the relationships. Okay.
It's the relationships, I think, teach you a little bit. In my experience.
Because I went to a top tier business school, I went to a top tier management consulting company, which led me to work on the Chicago 2016 bid for when Chicago was bidding for the Olympics. I worked for the vice chairman who I ended up starting a restaurant company with.
Yeah.
And because of that, I did this and I did this and now I'm here. Right. So yeah, but I didn't learn about business, right, until I actually spent my own freaking money. Then, listen, if you've raised money and, we used to say, we'll take care of your capital like it was our own. No, you won't. You won't. No. Yeah. Like, listen, if I lose 20 grand, guess what? I personally have 20,000 less in my bank account. It's not like I lost your 20,000, but I still get paid. It's just it's a little different. That's a crock of shit. Like nobody takes care of that when you're, and frankly, astute investors don't want you to spend their money like you spend yours because they want growth, right? And they don't want you to be afraid. Right. So
no, I'm sorry. I was MIA there for a moment. I could tell y'all we're deep into your business convo, so I didn't want to interject with any of my stupid freshman level questions.
Mike's always pulling me back, Matt, from thankfully saving listeners because you have to come back on the show. This is like I find that when we get into these rambling conversations with guests, and we've made some good friends through the show, I think you're in the 60s, right? So there's 60 hours of content out there of different things and, shows about underwear and shows about histocompatibility of DNA, right? Like everything in between. But like, I always know that when we start babbling about this, like connection,
I can talk about a lot of nonsense that has nothing to do with business.
That
no one may want to hear my opinion.
From an expertise perspective.
I'll emphatically say it like it's fact. That's like, this is how it is. That's it.
Well, they have to hear your opinion because we put it on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, LinkedIn, and every other channel that's out there. They have to hear your opinion, at least a few thousand people.
Hey, that's great. Someone may agree with me, maybe one person.
Yeah. Sure. So here's a question that I think is cool, that I think is really interesting for you, because you described a youth that was like, maybe a little bit rougher and tumble than you would announce with your suit on in front of a capital partner. But, it's there, right? What would you say now to 15-year-old or, 17-year-old you, if you could say something? What would you say? I mean, you're in Lake Tahoe. That's, again, I don't want to pigeonhole you into American dream. And that's not why you came onto the show. But like, look, man, working for a top tier, doing this, starting a business, doing that, those types of things. A lot of people who are 15, 17 years old, we have a lot of teachers who play our shows for their classes and such. Like, what would you say? I mean, to a high schooler, you?
Yeah, first of all, well, I'd say, okay, to me at 15, I would say, get smart and focus on school. Honestly, it would have just been, it would have been a lot. Listen, it would have been a lot easier if I didn't mess around. It would have been a lot easier if I didn't spend all my time at the bar. It would have just been a lot easier. Right. And so, but the truth is, forget about what I say to everyone is everyone wants to look at where someone is. Right. Like, hey, I live in, Lake Tahoe and I then, get to go snowboarding when I want. And I travel a lot. I have this business. I can live anywhere in the world, still do it. But what did it take and what level of sacrifice? You see me now. You didn't see me in March when I was about to lose everything. I owe the U.S. government a ton of money, trying to figure that out, and intense pressure where, hey, maybe I would have had a clean bankruptcy if I couldn't figure it out. Right. Mm-hmm. Just as a financial maneuver. Right. You didn't see that. You didn't see what it took, the sacrifice, when you're working at these various companies. Right. And frankly, sometimes I just got lucky. Right. Like I just met the right person. I met the guy who hired me into the consulting company after business school playing beer pong at a tailgate. True story. We were playing beer pong. Right. And I just got lucky. Right. So what I would say to a 15-year-old is just, and it sounds cliche, work hard at school, right? And just focus, because the people that win at the end of the day are the people that work hard and do well at school, right? You don't have, so I shouldn't say that. That's not true. A lot of entrepreneurs don't do well in school, right? But you should, okay, so I shouldn't say that. But you at least have to try and focus. Maybe you're not the best, maybe you're a B student. That's fine, right? But you can learn what you're good at. Maybe you're terrible at everything except for music and you want to embark on a career in music, right? Go do that. If you want to be an entrepreneur in music, go do that, right? Just because you don't succeed in one area doesn't mean you can't succeed in another, right? So just, focus. For me, it would be staying, just stop messing around with school and believe in yourself, right? You can, at the end of the day, you're going to get into the working world and you're going to work for a company, right? Listen, the reason I started my entrepreneurial journey and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I never knew how. The reason I started is because I got laid off in 2009. That's how it all started.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I got laid off. I said, it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was. There's no way I would be here today. Right. And so, but you have to, what I would say to any teenager or anyone just coming out, you have to work hard. Nothing's given to you. You're not owed anything. And you can just create what you want. Just work hard.
It sounds like another thing that you've done, and you're humble about it, and you even kind of joke about it in being like some partying, right? Like being part of a bar, meeting somebody. But it sounds like something you've done, and the reason I hone in on that is because it doesn't have to be partying, right? Especially if you're listening to it as a kid, like, oh yeah, I'll just party my way, and I'll put it. Sounds like something you've always done is you've always put yourself into a position to be in the place, maybe not right place, right time, but to be in the place so that you could, advance yourself toward experiences, right? Because a lot of those things, because when I go back and we listen to the show, it's a little bit of ping pong, right, Matt? And hopefully that doesn't sound disrespectful.
No, it is. That's accurate. It really is, Ryan.
It's a ping pong game because you kept every time, bypassing going down into the bucket and getting reset out the cannon again, right? Like you kind of keep going up along. I think I confused pinball and ping pong.
It's all right.
I'm sorry.
It's like you're jumping from ladder.
I'm
trying to jump from ladder to ladder, and you basically the next ladder. You're
at the end of my customary drink too. Yeah, right.
You're holding on to the bottom.
But hopefully my point isn't lost on that, right? That always pushing forward to put yourself in the right spot, always pushing forward to do that. And, approaching it like, fuck man, 2009, losing your job was close to the bottom of the world at that point in time. Right. Yeah. You were an adult then too, right? A lot of the guys we have to come onto the show, I think maybe are a little bit junior from you. And when we talk about, and even ourselves, when we talk about the economy, we were a little bit closer to just wet behind the years out of college. You were full-blown career when that shit collapsed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Right after business
early
school.
Full-blown career.
Big loans.
Yeah,
Big loans.
Yeah.
I mean, I had
real loss.
150K in loans or whatever the hell it is out of business school back then.
I argue with Ryan because I agree. Y'all are some crazy, by definition, entrepreneurs. I started my own business because no one would hire me. That doesn't make me, I'm not an entrepreneur and I'm not really in a hurry to do this all again. I keep talking to you guys and I'm like, what is wrong with these people? They're addicts. It's just their drug is totally legal. It's inspiring, but I'll be honest. I know that I am not the same as you guys because the things that give me heart palpitations are they got you guys grinning and there's a fire in your eyes and I'm like, man, I don't know, serial nothing. I don't want to be serial nothing. But I love the personalities that when guys like you just start these conversations and you get to be around each other and just that fire and that there is something you mentioned earlier between kind of the hard work and the school. And I agree with you. The hard work is more important than the school. It really is. But that school will open some doors, right? That degree is a certificate that can allow you opportunities that they're not necessarily going to be impossible to achieve. But man, it's going to be pretty hard when you didn't graduate or you have no degree. You read the story because it's 1 in a million and they tell it to us over and over again like it's real, feasible to be the Mark Zuckerberg.
No, it's not.
So much.
Listen, it's not. It's not. Like, you know, a lot of people, one of the other things I realized is how many people start at third base in life. And of course they get home because they started at third base, right? They're not, you know, everyone does, you know, forget about whether you agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. Fact is, everyone starts at a different, you know, point
Absolutely.
in the game, right? We're not all starting the same. And, you know, you think you may, but no, people have advantages. I did not. And so why make it harder for yourself? Right.
Yep.
So it's just, why make it harder for yourself? No, you do not have to go to college. You do not have to graduate high school to be successful in life. That's a lie. Does it make it easier if you not only go to college, but let's just say I went to Michigan for undergrad, not just graduate school. Would the next few jobs be a lot easier? Would have I had to, you know, kick and scream to get into a better company? Probably not. I just would have been recruited at, you know, 21, 22 years old. Right. So it's, I don't think, and it's just really, you know, I would just say, like, just make your life easier. Stop making it hard. And by the way, like, I mean, I would bang at work until last year and a half ago. At this point, I was banging my head against the wall, like just working 14-hour days till my wife was like, listen, what are you doing? Like, this is just stupid. And, you know, she's like, why don't you hire someone? You hire all these people overseas. She's like, why don't you hire someone? I was like, can I hire someone to run my company in the Philippines? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, we're going to China. You're not working. Or what she said is, I would like it if you don't work when we're in China. That's wife speak for don't effing work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like, but even like until then, like I said, okay,
don't ruin another vacation, Matt. Don't ruin another one working and making money and paying for it.
Oh, yeah. So no, my wife is crazy successful. And the truth is I couldn't have done what I did in the e-commerce business without her support, because it made things a lot easier. Right.
Yeah. Those survival times.
Yeah. So, you know, but like, so I've hired someone, right? She replaced me in 45 days. Like, I went from 14 to 3 hours. Now I work 3 hours a week on the business, and I'm soon to move to 3 hours a month, maybe 4, like once a week. I'll have a meeting. But like, even then, like I was learning, I made stuff harder than I needed to be. I had this skill set of doing it. I didn't use it. So just make your life easy. Stop punching yourself in the face. Like, it's just stupid, right? I think we all do it. I think just in our life, and like in our life, how many times do you do something to make your life harder?
Well, and being a grinder can be a bit of a curse too, right? Because like Matthew, you've always, no matter what, you'll climb out. I'm not saying you've dug your own holes, but no matter what, you've counted on yourself, right? Which is absolutely a blessing to develop and have that ability and like carry that confidence. But yeah, at some point in your life, you got to be like, man, why am I trying to do it the same way I was when I was 25? There aren't the same amount of hours left in my day at 40 as there were in 25. And you know what? Maybe I don't love the grind like as much as I used to. And maybe I just want, so yeah, that recognition and that redirection. I mean, identification of it is absolutely the most important part. You know, people love their jobs. Really? You love not doing anything else for 14 hours a day? Because I just don't believe that leads to overall happiness. I'm just a person who's a big supporter of balance.
I think it's not as binary as that always.
No, I agree.
Right? Like, there is somebody who's a creator has the switch to work in bang head for 14 hours, but a weird drive to be able to give it up when the control. That's like that's the balance. That's the yin and the yang of it. That's not the science part, I think.
Listen, but I think you're right. You nailed me. I'm a grinder, and I think I just came to a point where, like, why the hell am I doing this? I know the better way. Yep. Like, I preach it. If someone asked me to do what I'm doing, I would say, no, go do this. I'm like, well, yeah. I got caught in my own stuff. I mean, that's really it. Yeah. I got caught in my own stuff. And, you know, it took me like, but again, like I was, so I'm 45, so I was 44 to realize, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you don't want to work like this. Like, I mean, and I still played hard my entire life. Like,
I mean, still played hard, but
like, why am I grinding? Why don't I just set things up differently? Like, you know how to do it. And so that's, now that's the journey I'm on, to do it for myself and others, like just to help people.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's a lot. Not grinding is a lot better than grinding. I've always felt I should grind. That's what smart people do. Grind it out.
Especially if you've walked those roads, Matthew. Right. So I wouldn't want to be 50, in charge of all this stuff, or having a portfolio like you've described, having not had the experiences you had. Right. Because at some point you're bullshitting, but you're not, because you've been that dude at the first rung. And you've climbed your way up it. And like, to me, that's, you don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be this. But that experience, who's not going to sit there and listen to you when you're saying like, no, I've been the door-to-door guy. I've been the boardroom guy. And now I'm the guy who, I'm not coming in. Just answer when I call. I like that. It's not accountability, but it's just like, it's relatability. And I think as a business owner, CEO, boss, whatever you want to title it, I think that's like, having the right answer is important, but the way you deliver it and the way you communicate with your people, like, to me, that's what gets the job done. And what keeps getting it done.
Well said. I mean, you guys know.
Are you a spiritual guy? Are you a workout guy? Are you like David Goggins below that hoodie you got on there? Like, what's your unwinding? How do you unwind that battery?
So these days, snowboard. I definitely snowboard, big outdoors guy.
Is it extreme sports?
Yeah, extreme sports for sure. I'm taking up kiteboarding, which, man, that is.
You and Mike are similar.
Oh my God, that's kicking my ass. Like,
are you like a backcountry snowboard guy? Like, what's your preferred terrain?
Yeah, so I've done backcountry, side country all the time.
Okay,
I'm learning how to do. So there's backcountry. That's what I would really consider backcountry. I've never done without a guide.
Okay,
but a friend of mine turned me on to split boarding last year. And
you guys are.
We had a guest.
What's wrong with you guys?
We had a guest who's a split boarder.
Yeah.
That sounds like an awful workout to me. That just sounds horrible. But I don't like the cold. I'm a baby.
I mean, last year we did, I think it was like 6 hours. We did like 2 runs. Like, it was like we're going all the way in the backcountry, but it was really awesome. No one was there. So like kiteboarding, I'm learning. That is super fun. But that's a whole nother level of nuttiness, because you're nothing for the wind. My brother's learning, and he and I was, so I'm a little more advanced than him, but like, that's like very relative. I've done it like 30 times. He's done it like 5, right? So it's the relative advances. And I was yelling at him. And of course, he's my brother. He doesn't listen to anything I have to say. But I'm like, what? Don't watch the board. Watch the kite. Watch the kite. Now he's like 215, 220. Watch the kite. Watch the kite. All of a sudden, a gust comes. Bam! Just smacks him down.
Yeah, it'll knock you out.
Like he's a piece of paper.
Happen.
Like he's a piece of paper, and it doesn't care. So like I'm trying to, but you can do it safely, but you got to pay attention. And so I'm learning that. That's super fun. Started meditating. Another reason I started this past business, I went to a meditation retreat. My wife's like, "You're lost in life, and why don't you go to this fancy meditation retreat?" I never done meditated, never done meditation. People always said I should do it. I think what was really cool, I'd shout out to Mela, because these guys changed my life. What I did was a group of super inspiring, successful people. I mean, I'm not successful by the measure of these people. Like,
got it.
One of the people
they got the titles, the names.
Like number 3 at NASA. Another guy started a company and grew to, he's a billionaire. I mean, listen, they inspired me, not the other way around. But
I got it.
Being around these people, sitting there, quieting for 3 days, right? And just reconnecting with people after, online entrepreneurship is very isolating. Right. I mean, me talking to you, this is my world. This is all I do all day. I don't go into an office. I'm not BSing, and I'm a social guy. So to be there, it just re-inspired me. So now I meditate every day for about 45 minutes.
Wow. That's a good session.
Oh, that's quite a practice.
Yeah. I mean,
you.
it's good. I like to say I'm zen as fuck. My wife says.
How long have you been meditating for, Matt? Are we talking months or years now?
A year.
When was the retreat? About a year ago?
Yeah, it was March. No, sorry. Oh, wait, it was right before the pandemic, so not even a year. So
pre-COVID.
February. Like,
set you up well for the rockiness ahead.
It was, I mean, I'd like to say my wife is a very smart person, so she had the foresight. So she'll listen to this. So, honey, you had the foresight, and you really helped me. But look, listen, it's one of those things that if you would have told me it helps me in business, I wouldn't have believed you, right? I'm not a hokey, I'm not a spiritual guy whatsoever. But sitting there for 45 minutes, some days it'll be 15, right? But like sitting there and just trying to like just quiet your mind helps me throughout the day. What do you guys do? What do you guys do? Because I'm actually always interested. You're really smart guys. So what do you do for fun?
I'm a meditator, probably 5 years into practice, daily practice for sure. And then like yoga and meathead training both. Like, so daily yoga, like I say yoga, and I think that's just like maybe not exactly it. I stretch for 15 to 30 minutes a day. I probably meditate for 15 to 30 minutes, depending.
He walks for like, he goes on like 5 mile walks every morning.
Yeah, I walk for about 5 miles
before the sun comes up.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
That's the biggest thing. You know what, Mikey? I'm glad you said that. Like the biggest thing for me before, I try to make it before the sun comes up. Sometimes it's easier than others, right? It's cold. It's cold.
I just
in Detroit
tease him
now,
because these things
where I just moved back.
to me. But I get to see
but like
how
that's a big thing for me. That 5 mile walk. Yeah, that 5 mile walk is huge to me.
That's awesome.
So like that kind of stuff. A lot of solemnness thing because I do what you do and have for years, right? Like I've worked remotely for 7 or 8 years completely. So this is my like it's the cleaning person, me and the cleaning person who I see, and my wife who I love dearly. I should mention I see every single day. But otherwise, like it's not. I mean, like if I'm not going to Taco Bell, like I'm not seeing anybody. Yeah. Right. I mean, I eat better than that, to be fair. But like like ultimately, like so for me, it's very much so. And that was a big thing for me. It continues to be a big thing for me. We're kind of getting past the hour, so probably got to close it down. But I had to learn in my entrepreneurial energy to be alone. Have to learn to be alone. Mm. And that shit's hard as fuck for me.
Yeah, it's hard.
AF. Really is.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good and fair thing to say that you really don't have in mind. You don't have a plan for that. And then I was talking to an old colleague this morning, a guy I used to work with in Ontario, and I get lonely. Yeah, like the conversation went on. We talked about business for about 30 minutes and then everything else for about 45. And like you guys are the same way. Like we're social people, and entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. So that's a kind of a unforeseen thing that, you may not catch up to you. But for me, I know that's something I've had to find ways to get over that hurdle. Cause like what Ryan said, when it comes to business, I got to show up as me every day. I can't count on like that cute receptionist to make me smile, or that, the guy in the office next to me with the latest funny YouTube video. Like I used to have wit, right? We've all been in a situation where like those things were nice. I don't necessarily miss them, but some days I kind of wish I had a little bit of people around,
Going to the office, I don't know. I started going to WeWork. I got loopy. I got a little loopy.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't miss it.
I had to go to WeWork. I used to go to WeWork.
Same for me. Yeah, same for me. I miss WeWork though a little bit.
Was that the communal
during the pandemic?
I would go to the communal thing.
Yeah,
just to be there and see someone. And
I would love
someone.
that. I would love that.
They have kombucha on tap. At least in the ones in the big cities, they got kombucha on tap.
And beer. For that. They stopped that.
They do have. They used to have like beer. Some of them have beer. So like all the ones in Atlanta have beer. The ones in like Kansas City have beer. The ones in DC don't have beer.
See, like, I'm a WeWork I would like guy. To do this once a week,
love WeWork.
But I couldn't do WeWork 5 days a week because I wouldn't get shit done. I just have a bunch of friends.
No, I don't. You know what? We're too old to do it 5 days a week. We are. You're a little weird.
Mike, I'm going to ask.
I guess I show up to meetings in the same way I do now with I show up with Jordans and Lululemon pants on. It's just like my jam, especially over the past 5 to 7 years. But I mean, I love it. I'm as serious as anybody else. It's just how I roll. But for me, if I go to WeWork every single day of the week, I get sucked way more into the Jordans and athleisure than into the executive office. So I got to go once or twice a week. So I just got a new office in Detroit, actually. in the Fisher building. So that's my new
Congratulations. Good for you. Good deal.
We are clearly
thanks.
huge fans of Matthew Yahes. I have to cut it off. I'm sorry. I have to be this guy who's flicking the lights. I gotta.
It's the middle of Mike's workday.
Mainly because if we go too deep, we won't have as much of an excuse to bring you on very soon. Matthew, if you could provide a little bit, and just to your comfort level, but what's the best way? Like, because you've run the gamut, brother. I hope our audience feels or realizes how great of a resource you could be. Like, I'm sorry to put you in that spot, but are you comfortable sharing, contacts or we're Instagram and kind of Facebooky, but what's your spiel for the contact?
Do one of two things, right? Email me directly. That's fine, right? I'm a person. I'm not, Matt@extendyourteam.com. Just email me. That's it.
Cool.
You want to connect with me on LinkedIn? Shoot me a LinkedIn message, but you can just email me directly and I will personally answer. Right. That's the one email I do myself. So, I don't give it out much, but please email me. Love to talk to anyone. If they want to actually have a meeting, no problem. I'm happy to give anyone advice. If they can just avoid some of the nonsense, I will feel better about myself. So do it for me.
It's so hard to find validated opinion.
Do it for me.
You've got some cool stuff that's written too. So maybe we'll talk later about me being your press agent, but if you don't want to email Matthew, we do some limited research. Like, you've written some really cool pieces, not just about succeeding. And if you're out there thinking about dreaming big, I think you need to listen to guys like Matthew, because you have to build a well-rounded parenthesis about trying to be an entrepreneur, trying to be your own person. Do you write that stuff yourself, or do you have like a copywriter when you work? No. You're a good copywriter, man.
Oh, thank you. I actually, I
appreciate that. It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, no.
Well, some of it's like old too that I read. Like, some of it was from like 2014 type shit. But to me, I think this about like iconic comedians. I know we got to go, Mikey. I appreciate you rushing me off.
No, I'm not trying to.
I think this about like iconic comedians. Shout out like the Chappelle Show if you're a fan with all the drama that's going on with the Chappelle Show. But you could watch a 20-year-old Chappelle Show and find comedy in it. I think like articles like one of the ones that I read about you was actually about it seems like losing it all type thing. And so I don't know the one, and our listeners should go out and find, there's quite a few of them that are out there, but like the advice still holds up completely. The advice still holds up. It was about, seeking a sales, like a real sales win after losing it all. And the advice still holds up. And I think that those are the people that, like, if you're out there trying to build your career based on advice, find people that give consistent advice for years. It's not going to be some magic gem shit. And it's definitely somebody like you, Matt.
Oh, thank you.
So
this has been awesome. Thank you.
I'm winded.
Thank you.
I'm windy.
This has been awesome.
McD is all business. I know Mike got my back. Skrilla on the track. ConventioNOT. What that means is unconventional. Been in the game of you, so comprehend what I'ma give to you. Cause in the instant you can turn your hustle to an institute. I can't stop, I'm on top because I'm ConventioNOT.